Welcome to Study Skills, How to Study Better, Not Harder, Part 2. The next suggestion I have is to space your repetition. What this means is to spread out your learning in any subject a little every day, just like an athlete. You're not going to do one thing for hours and that's it. You want to spread it out. Do a little bit of each subject, a little bit each day. Your brain is like a muscle. It can only handle a limited amount of exercise on one subject at a time. So you don't want to wear it out by overdoing it on one subject. Mix up your learning between subjects or even within one subject so that your brain doesn't tire out on one concept or approach. Don't cram before tests. This is really important. It's always good to study before a test, but it should be a regular part of pretty much every day, not a one-time thing right before a test. Information is more easily absorbed and recalled if you aren't stressed, and when you're cramming right before a test, you're stressed. So that's not the best time to try to get all the information in your brain. Cramming doesn't allow for diffuse thinking to build the connections in your brain. Diffuse thinking is that thinking that happens when you aren't focusing. So have you ever tried to remember something and you're trying and you can't remember it, but then as soon as you stop trying, you remember it? That's because the diffuse thinking started to make the connections in your brain while you weren't focused. You want to have time for that to happen. Focus on relaxation before a test rather than last minute cramming to be most successful. And practice over time makes permanent pathways in the brain, especially with abstract concepts. The more you practice, the more permanent the learning becomes. So cramming before a test isn't going to make anything permanent. It might make you remember something for the test, but you're going to dump that information, which is not really learning. Read your textbook prior to class. Take a look at subheadings and any editor's introduction before you begin reading so that you can predict what the reading will be about. Ask yourself what you know about a subject before you begin reading to activate prior knowledge. Look carefully at items that are in boxes or in bold type and carefully read over examples if there are any. Turn chapter headings into questions to help you focus as you read. So for example, if the chapter heading is Causes of World War II, then you want to ask yourself, what are the causes of World War II? And that's the information you're looking for as you read. Pay close attention to new vocabulary and highlight or take notes on those, because that's going to be important information. Make note of main ideas and important elements of support. Feel free to check with your instructor during office hours to see if you're on track. That's what your teacher is there for. Take time to reflect on what you've read. How are the passages or chapters interrelated? How does the information fit into details you've already learned? What do you want or need more information on? It's important to do all this prior to class. That way you're prepared for class. Make note of any questions you want to bring up in class. And all of this will help you focus more in class. Use recall. After you read a page, look away and recall the main ideas. If you can't do that, then the reading hasn't sunk in. Try recalling main ideas when you're walking to class or in a different room from where you originally learned it. An ability to recall, to generate the ideas from inside yourself, is one of the key indicators of good learning. Reread prior to a quiz or a test. This is different from cramming. Rereading does not mean you failed the first time. The best readers reread at least parts of what they've read for clarification or review. Don't just reread. Read and then close the text and attempt to recall what you've read, just like we've said. If you're able to follow and recall explanations and examples clearly, have confidence that you understand the material well. Anything you can't recall, that's what you need to study some more. Summarize concepts and procedures. After completing homework, take a few minutes to summarize the concepts and procedures you've been studying and practicing. This will help to ingrain it into your brain. It's worth the extra few minutes. This helps solidify your learning and discover where you may need help. And it also helps you to reflect and make connections between ideas and information. Another interesting way that you can help yourself study is to create index cards. Use individual cards for different facts or vocabulary or procedures or concepts. This gives you a portable study guide. And you can also use them as flashcards to quiz yourself. You can put questions on one side and answers on the other. And the act of writing on the cards actually more deeply encodes what you're trying to learn into your brain. Revisit previously studied concepts. Recycling back to material covered previously will help refresh your skills and knowledge. This also gives you a chance to review vocabulary, symbols, and directions to exercises that may be used in later sections. Do quiz, test, and paper corrections. This is really important. After a quiz, test, or a paper is returned to you, take the time to review it and work on the things that you did incorrectly or that need improvement. Learn from your mistakes. This is so important. You can do this with a tutor, or you can ask a teacher to help you with it. Most instructors will gladly check your corrections if you ask them to during office hours, because this is a big part of learning well. Consider studying with a classmate. A study partner or a study group can give you someone to consult with and bounce ideas off of when trying to solve complex problems or understand difficult concepts. You can also quiz each other. Sometimes talking something through is all you need to strengthen your understanding. So having someone there that you can talk something through with can be really useful. Quizzing each other can be useful. Try explaining something to your partner and answering any questions they may have. Sometimes just seeing whether you can explain something well is a good way of helping yourself know whether you've learned something. Explain to someone not in your class. Try explaining material to a spouse or a child and see if you can answer their questions. Teaching someone else is an excellent way of learning for yourself. Sleep and exercise. Sleep shrinks your brain cells in a good way, not in a bad way, to wash out the toxins that get stuck between the brain cells, which makes room for thinking. Sleep strengthens and rehearses learned neural patterns, allowing parts of the brain to talk to each other. This is that diffuse thinking we were talking about. Studying before sleep can actually increase processing of information while you sleep. And exercise helps you learn and remember better by increasing diffuse thinking, giving you that time to not focus on what you're learning. Exercise also helps your brain function by reducing stress. It actually changes your body chemistry so that it makes learning easier and better. What not to do. Don't passively reread without proving you can recall the information. That's just a waste of time. Anything passive in learning isn't actually learning. Don't let highlighting overwhelm you. Just moving your hand over the page doesn't put information into your brain. So highlighting itself is not useful. Don't merely glance at a problem solution and think you know how to do it. You need to be able to solve a problem without looking at the solution. Don't wait until the last minute to study. That goes back to that don't cram. Don't overlearn in a single study session. Once you've got something down, hammering away more doesn't strengthen long-term memory. It just wastes learning time. So once you feel like you've got something down, take your break, move on to a different subject. Come back to it later to recall to see if you actually did learn it. Give yourself time, but just going over it and over it and over it is just a waste of time. Don't let study sessions with friends turn into chat sessions. Obviously, that's not going to be useful. Don't neglect to read the text before you start working problems. Don't forget to check with instructors or classmates to clear up points of confusion. You don't have to do studying on your own. Learning is not a solitary process. Consult with your colleagues. Don't think you can learn deeply when you're being distracted. You can't. There is no such thing as multitasking. There is simply doing many things at once. Don't study or take a test without enough sleep. You have to have enough sleep. Thank you for joining me for part 2. I hope you can study well. Good luck.